Hey guys, welcome to another episode. I'm Vanessa and I'm so excited. I've got such an amazing guest for you guys today. Hi Tilly, this is Tilly Berry, founder of the yoga agency. How's it going?
Hi, Vanessa. I'm good. I'm really good, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so excited. I think this is going to be such an amazing chat. So Tilly, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm a 28-year-old yoga teacher and a business owner. So I started the yoga agency in 2018, which provides wellness experts to businesses, apps, and individuals. And more recently, we've started curating really holistic wellness programs. I currently live in London, in Clapham, and I love being outdoors and gardening. I love thrift shopping, which I think Nabaya was talking about last week, which was really on trend, and I'm really into that. Been doing all my shopping from charity shops recently, and I love yoga, of course, because I'm a yoga teacher. And to be honest, I can't think of many things that I don't love. But yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, you're also such an animal lover. You're just all full of like love and positivity. You're always just such a beam of light.
Oh, thanks, Leslie. Yeah, I do love animals.
So as you said, you work in or you started a business in the wellness industry. So, how did you first get started in wellness? Obviously, it's quite a broad term and it's quite a broad industry nowadays. But how did you get your start in it?
Yeah, I mean, it started probably ages ago during my childhood. So, for a little bit of context, I grew up in Kent in the middle of nowhere. I had the most incredible childhood. I had a roof over my head. I had very loving, supportive family. I had lovely meals. I had an education, friends, surrounded by beauty and nature. And as well as that, my parents were amazingly loving and generous, and they were great teachers. They taught us the importance of practicing gratitude from a young age. So every day it was thanking, being thankful for being here every single day on the planet. And then also just to set an intention each day, to know what we want to achieve. And they always prioritized effort over attainment, which I still value today, because I think it really comes down to what your intention is, and that really helps you to achieve your goals. So yeah, and then later on, I went to university in Edinburgh, and I studied human and social geography, and we looked at the social impact of climate change. I studied human issues like sustainability and inequality and poverty. And it was really eye-opening as an experience for me. So having previously been very sheltered and not having very high levels of resilience, I really, really struggled during university with mental health issues. So I had bouts of depression, really bad anxiety, and eating disorders. And I just put myself under so much pressure.
Mm.
And looking back, I actually can't believe like how badly I treated myself, and the way I felt about myself had such low self-worth. And it was really like I was punishing myself for the privileges I had growing up. And it was confusing for my family, my friends, because I had always been so joyful to be around, and I had such a joyful upbringing. Um, and it wasn't until I moved back down to London, and started working in the city pantry, which is where I met the lovely Vanessa. And that's when I discovered yoga. And very slowly I began to sort of forgive myself and love myself again. And I started to heal, and it became like therapy for me. And initially it was very much the physical benefits of yoga that I was interested in. But then I became more aware of the mental health impacts it was having. Um, and yeah, I just had this thirst. I was like, I need to know more about this practice. Like, how could this practice, which I initially thought was a physical practice, have such a transformative effect on my life? And
Mm.
that's when I decided to do my teacher training in Goa with the yoga people. And I started to learn about the true meaning of yoga as a journey of self-discovery. And all the pieces started to come together for me, and really, really connected back to myself, and to my spiritual self,
Mm.
and started to live a more purposeful life. So I'd say up until that point, I was a very good student. I did what I was told. I did what everyone told me to do, my parents, family. friends, society, university. And this was a turning point for me, because I started to realize, like, I have a purpose, I'm here for a reason, and I need to start doing things for me. So yeah, that was my sort of journey into yoga and wellness.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think that what you say about the initial, what you were getting out of it initially was primarily the sort of physical benefits, and then it transcends by actually you start noticing, you become more present just intrinsically by practicing yoga, and you kind of notice more about yourself, and then that curiosity kind of starts, and that's definitely something that resonates with me. Because obviously, yes, you mentioned that we used to work together, and you actually were my yoga teacher as well. I really got into yoga. I'd practiced it a little bit when I was growing up, here and there, class here and there, when it was all very very trendy, because Madonna was doing it and all these A-listers, and it was like the exercise to do when we were growing up, and how to keep slim, and all of that kind of messaging. But I never really practiced. And I think what really resonated with me when I started practicing and going to your classes was exactly that. And I love what you say about effort over achievement. I think that is so powerful, and it's something that really stuck with me through your classes as well. Yeah, I've loved doing your classes, but I'm really interested to hear more about your yoga teacher training. So you went to Goa to do that. How long was the entire process for you, I guess, to get trained up as a yoga instructor?
Mm. Well, actually, I mean, looking back, it was quite a long process, because I was obviously working at City Pantry, and you'll remember that we worked pretty hard. Well, you still do. We worked pretty hard at City Pantry, like startup culture. So we sort of work hard, play hard, but it meant that I couldn't take more than 2 weeks out to go and do my teacher training, and I wasn't ready at that point to just drop my full-time job. So I actually spoke to the yoga people and asked if I could do half of their London training, which is done usually over the whole of the year,
Mm.
every weekend, because you have to do 200 hours basically.
Wow.
And I didn't want to do that, because I did want to have the immersive experience where you're in Goa for 4 weeks. So I asked if I could do half and half. So could I do half of the London training and then 2 weeks in Goa? So I joined them halfway through the training for the last 2 weeks, and that worked really well for me, because I sort of got the best of both worlds. So in total, it took me 6 months to get trained, but I did a lot of yoga before then, so I really got my practice to a place where um, I knew a lot about yoga before I went on the training, basically. And
To
then
kind of
after you've done your first training, then of course there's like 100 other trainings to do. So it's just like the first stepping stone, in a way.
That's quite reflective of yoga as a practice, isn't it? It is a practice. It's not like you're never going to complete it. You're never going to get to a
Oh
stage where
yeah,
you're not learning anything new. In
yeah,
terms of,
exactly.
was it like, so in my mind, I'm really imagining something out of Eat, Pray, Love, like you're living in an ashram, and you're only eating veggie, you're doing cleanses, you're waking up at sort of 4 a.m. to
Yeah.
do chores. Was it like that?
Oh yeah, in Goa it was. In London, not so much, because everyone was coming after work. It was like we would train until 10 p.m. on a Friday evening, and then I'd be home at like 12 p.m. But in when we were in Goa, it was very much like we woke up first thing in the morning. I'm pretty sure it was 4:30 a.m. and we would meditate for an hour, and then we would do a really strong Ashtanga practice for 2 hours, and then we would do some philosophy, and then we would have um, a lunch, a really lovely veggie lunch, and then we'd go back and do another rigorous Ashtanga class, and more self-study. So yeah, the days were really long, and it was really challenging, but it was also such an incredible experience. It's like, a lot of people say this, but like when you go on your yoga teacher training, it's like therapy, because you're in this room full of people that are like-minded, and maybe previously you'd felt quite disconnected from yourself and the world around you, but then suddenly you're with this group of people who kind of understand you and why you're here, and like what you feel very listened to and very heard, and it's just a really safe space. So yeah, it's an incredible experience. If anyone's thinking about it, then yes, do
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Wow, it's
Vanessa, are you thinking about it?
I mean, I know quite a few people who've actually been doing it this year, but they have been, and I did ask because I remember you had done yours and you had gone to India to do it, and I know friends of mine who they were based in Hong Kong back in the day when I was living there, and they went to Bali to do it. So obviously, there's loads of different. I'm sure there are loads of different places and courses all around the world to be able to do that. But yeah, I have a few friends who did it this year, but then obviously with COVID, things changed. People weren't able to travel as much. But most of them were doing them in London or doing them virtually. So as much as I think a lot of
Mm.
people would have loved to have gone to a sort of retreat or like a silent retreat, actually, I have a few friends who have done silent retreats. And that was
Oh wow.
fascinating. I don't know if would you consider doing something like
Oh
that? Do you
yeah.
know anything about like silent retreats, those sorts of courses?
I've never done it myself, but I've heard a lot about it, and I have had friends who have done similar things. It's not something that's on the radar right now, just because I'm actually trying to channel a different energy at the moment. That's about more about helping my business to grow,
Mm,
and leadership and empowerment. But I think there is so much value to be found in silence and listening to yourself and slowing things down.
mm,
In fact, I would really recommend anyone who is looking out for a yoga teacher training to get really clear about what you want to get out of it, because there are lots of different types of yoga training. So mine was in Ashtanga, Vinyasa, and Rocket. So it was really physically quite an intense training.
mm.
I later did one in Yin, which is much more about meditation, slowing down, listening to the body, very long holds. So it's good to know like what you hope to get out of it, and
Mm.
then you can ask the right questions when trying to find the right training for you.
Yeah, definitely. But even by the sounds of it, in spite of the fact that the ones that you did, like you said, they're very physical and they were very yeah, just a lot more physical. There seems to be quite a lot of reflective moments, and I guess like sort of baked into the course from what you were saying, how you guys would do a practice, but then you would also have classes or courses or moments of reflection and self discovery, and being present and those sorts of moments, which I guess really does center into yoga as a practice and as almost a
Mm.
lifestyle as opposed to just a way of exercising, which is, I think, what some people would. Fair enough. Some people will approach it just simply as exercise. Others maybe get more benefit out of it from the sort of reflective self awareness perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. So in the ancient spiritual texts, in the Bhagavad Gita, which I always found so hard to say, yoga is described as a journey of the self, through the self, to the self, and that really is what yoga is about. So it's, if you do go and do say like a very physical yoga class, then it's about what you take away from that class and what you bring into your life. So it might be a really energizing class, and at the end you go into shavasana and you become really mindful of what's actually taking place in your body. So you feel that energy running through you, and that's your prana, your life force. And you become really mindful of what's actually happening within your physical body. So you're sort of establishing that connection between your mind, body, and your soul.
Mm.
And that's when you really start to notice your yoga practice is you're really sort of doing yoga rather than just a physical class.
Yeah, absolutely. And you always talk about how important Shavasana, the resting pose, is at the end of the practice to close out the practice. And that's something I really took away. And it's really interesting when you talk about meditation. So traditionally, I've always found it really difficult to meditate. I
Mm.
just my mind's going a million miles an hour. There's always so much in there. I'm always thinking about, oh, what's next? What do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? Probably a symptom of a bit of my anxiety as well. However, I do find that for me, the time that I can be present, and I actually have said this to my therapist as well. She did ask me, she's like, when do you sit still? When are you present? When are you just clear your mind and
Mm.
just be present? And I was like, actually, it's when I'm doing yoga. And specifically,
Mm.
I have this ability, even if it's just for 2 minutes at the end when I'm doing Shavasana, I can really center in and feel every part of my body, which is such a weird concept. And I don't,
Mm.
so there's this Netflix series that came out this year called Midnight Gospel, and it's an animated series. And it's this guy, Duncan Trussell, who he is a comedian, but then he's also very into mindfulness. He's very self-aware and very into kind of self-love and just wellness in general. And he has a podcast as well. And this show actually was taking bits from his podcast, so he would speak to um, all sorts of people, writers, leaders, celebrities, comedians, musicians, whoever. And they would just chat on their podcast. And there was one where, for me, was super powerful. He spoke to his mum. I think he recorded it like a week before she died, or 2 weeks before she died, and she'd been battling cancer for quite a few years. So very emotional, very, very emotional episode. And they were talking about being present, because she was very into that as well, very into wellness and meditation. And there was a segment where she's instructing him. She's like, can like feel your hand, like look at your hand, and what do you feel? Like, can you like really center in your focus and feel your hand? And that for me, I was like, oh my God, yes, that's exactly what I feel when I'm doing my resting pose. And that's why, like, for me, and I guess maybe this is why you talk about the importance of it. Like, why is it so important to make sure you don't skip out on those moments of rest, and especially after yoga?
Yeah, I think, oh wow, that's it's really amazing that you have that experience at the end of class, because I think a lot of us most of us, we're very disconnected from our bodies. And we don't, if we go to a HIIT class, we might actually be doing more damage than good, because we're not doing the things mindfully. And I think that's what yoga is really good at, helping us to cultivate that awareness of our bodies. And when you start to realize when you're doing yoga, oh, I'm actually really feeling this here, or like, you know what, the teacher's telling me to do this, but it's really not working for me. Like, I really feel this twinge in my hip. You know your body better than anyone. And it's connecting to that and like really understanding that you actually know better than the teacher. That's when the yoga starts to happen, because you are creating this connection between your mind and your body that has maybe been maybe overlooked, given our busy lifestyles in the West. And we're very into sort of like sort of brain stuff, whereas we're not that connected to our spiritual selves. So I think slowing down, the final pose, sorry to come back to your point, is so important, because it is that moment to really reflect on your practice, to become really mindful, and sort of integrate your practice as well, so that when you leave the room, you're not, especially if you've done a very physical practice, you're not really airy and like up in the air. You've sort of brought yourself back down. You're very grounded, and you're very focused and relaxed.
Yeah, that's so important. So do you practice meditation sort of daily? Do you practice meditation regularly in your life?
Yeah, I would say it's a really important part of my morning. So it's good to remember that the morning really sets the tone for the rest of your day. So like one positive thought in the morning can really transform your entire day. Um, Actually, recently I've been doing this morning miracle club with one of our wellness coaches at the yoga agency. She runs it, and she sends us WhatsApp, everyone on the group, every morning, and it's a 15-minute guided meditation, each focusing on a different topic. And I've been playing it like 7 a.m. every morning before my boyfriend's even woken up, out loud, so that he can listen to it as well. And it's really inspiring, actually, because I mean, she always has a topic that she's focusing on, whether it's gratitude or looking for miracles, or treating failures like success, and positivity. That she encourages you to take some time out in the morning to center yourself, to still yourself, figure out what you want to achieve in the day, to acknowledge your breath. Like, breath is so important. It's an absolute fact. We can't live without our breath. But at the same time, the breath is the only thing we ever really need. So let's give it some credit and actually breathe properly in the morning, rather than if you wake up and you're already shallow breathing, then you're setting the tone for that day, that I'm going to be stressed and anxious today. Because if you're not breathing properly, it's so connected to our sympathetic nervous system that it will influence how you are feeling physiologically as well. So just checking in with the breath, make sure you're breathing into your belly. We're at our most efficient, our most focused, and we have the clearest vision when we are in a relaxed state, not when we're in fight or flight mode, which so many of us chronically are, because of, the exposure to all the different things that are happening in the world via social media or through Netflix or whatever, which is amazing. But can we also take back control of our own lives rather than letting these external things like our mobile phone, like our television, control us? So it's about taking back control, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you're so right as well. I mean, for a few different things that you were saying, but one specifically is breathing. And that is one that is so interesting to me because again, through yoga and through your teaching, you always remind us breathe through your nose. Like yoga is about, you take deep breaths through your nose and out your mouth, and that's how you should be breathing through your poses as you move with your breath as well. And there is so much science now as well into the positive effects of breathing through your nose, and actually it lowers your sort of cortisol levels and your kind of stress. It's a natural stress reliever as well. And yeah, definitely something that has been a real eye-opener for me as well, is that breathing, and is breathing properly as well. But I want to center back to what you were talking about with how you now incorporate your meditation into a really important part of your morning. So that I find really interesting because during lockdown, and I guess during this year in general, I've really taken a lot of self-exploration and self-discovery from it, as I'm sure a lot of other people have as well. But what really was really shown to me was my own sort of circadian rhythm. And by that I mean and being more present with myself and aware of myself, and noticing these small differences in maybe my productivity and my mood, and when I am most my brain and my mind is most open and amenable and pliable. And then when I know that, okay, it's going to hit 7 p.m. and I know that as much as I want to force myself, I'm not going to be productive after 7 p.m. I can sit myself in front of my laptop. I can work on, even if it's for the podcast, even if it's, other stuff. I'm not, my brain is just not wired for that. And my evenings just not productive. So I no longer try to force myself to that. So for you, when do you find yourself most productive? What does your routine look like?
I'm definitely morning. I love getting up in the mornings. As I say, really important for me to have, because I've got a history of anxiety. I do feel anxious quite regularly. I have to have these practices in place because I know it's the best way to help myself and help my business as well to thrive. So I know that every morning I need to have that check-in, be like, how am I feeling? Like, what's my breath saying? Can I center? What do I want to achieve today? What am I thankful for? And these are really important morning rituals for me. So I'm sure we'll talk about it in more detail later, but gratitude is just a complete game changer. It bears so much weight and it's so much better understood now that this is not some kind of like spiritual thing. This is like science. Grateful people, I saw a stat, are grateful people have 10% fewer stress related illnesses and 12% lower blood pressure. So this is really good stuff, and it's really good to be aware of it, because it's the simplest thing to say to yourself or whoever you're with in the morning, thank you. And every day is a miracle, and waking up and realizing that you take an inhale, that is a miracle. The very fact that we're here breathing on this planet is a miracle. And I think reminding ourselves of that is just so powerful and can do so much for our well-being and reducing our stress levels, and also allowing ourselves to become the best versions of ourselves possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, those morning rituals. Did I go off track again?
Not at all. No, absolutely not. No, this is all fantastic and so interesting for me, because I definitely thought of myself as a night owl. I used to, just simply because I'd be staying up late. But what I've realized now is staying up late, I was being a bit vegetative. I wasn't, just because I was staying up late doesn't mean I was actually at my most productive or at my best or in my best state of mind. And so for me, over this period of time, over this year, it's definitely, I've noticed more that I enjoy. Listen, mornings are still really difficult for me. I still need an alarm to get up. I'm not a natural sort of, oh, it's 7 a.m. and my body just wakes me up. I wish I was that person. I wish it was like a movie from film and the sun comes through and the birds are chirping and you just flutter your eyes open. No, it's not like that. I need an alarm. I need couple of cups of coffee in the morning to really get going. However,
Yeah.
I do find I get so much more done in the mornings than I do in the afternoons or in the evenings. And my mood is so much more elevated in the morning. And it's interesting you
Mm.
talk about gratitude and setting intentions, because and how that has now moved beyond New Age spiritualism, or sort of hippie stuff that
Mm.
people might have dismissed previously. And it's so much more within the frame of science and traditional methods of, I guess, self-care, because actually that is something that I started practicing this year as well, was keeping a gratitude journal that I fill in my points in the morning, I set my intention for the day, and then I fill in my thanks or, again, gratitude bullet points in the evening, and kind of do a recap of the day. And that actually was a suggestion from my therapist, someone who, does cognitive behavioral therapy and, is very much ingrained in also traditional sciences and traditional psychotherapy. And that was actually a suggestion from her. And I found it so beneficial to be able to not even just setting an intention or putting an affirmation out, because quite often my affirmations would be very similar, or the things that I put down that, what could you have done better, or how could you have influenced the day better for yourself? And most of the time I'm like, drink more water, stop drinking so much coffee, drink more water. Like, they're always very similar and always the same. But I did find
At
that,
least you know what it is.
I mean, true. Whether I practice it or not, I just keep writing it. And hopefully by writing it, I'm almost guilting myself into doing it so I don't have to keep writing it. It's like
Oh
guilt.
yeah, for sure. It will eventually happen.
It will stick. It will stick. But what's interesting with the gratitude stuff is not only the effect that it can have on my mood, but also it allows me to not dwell on the toxic or negative thoughts that do enter my mind, or if I do happen to have a bad day, or if there are external factors that influence my mood or influence my day. I really am sure I make a real conscious effort to talk about, even if, and specifically to talk about the small things that happen that I might have overlooked.
Mm.
And that for me has been really, really powerful. And in terms of, for you, do you journal every single day? Because I know that I noticed, obviously, this year you talked a lot more on your Instagram about practicing gratitude and journaling, and how you fit it into your morning routine. Is this still something that you do regularly?
Gratitude, yes. Journaling, I really go through stages. I would say it's not like a set thing I do every day, just
Mm.
because for me, my words, so our words are our prayers. So like what we say often becomes our what we say to ourselves becomes our thoughts, and our thoughts become our reality. So for me, it's really saying it to myself. I think for some people, it's really helpful writing it down. I've experimented with journaling a lot. It's not necessarily the most effective tool for me. I really like meditation and mindfulness and breath work. Journaling is just another fantastic tool to help you make sense of your thoughts and help you have a gratitude practice and do all these things for your well-being. But it might not be the one that's like right for you. So I think after having done it previously, I will go through phases of my life where I will really find solace in it and pick it up again. Right now, I'm not journaling so much. I mean, I do write blogs for the yoga agency, and
Mm.
that is like a form of journaling because I'm putting my thoughts on paper. Um, but yeah, not so much. I think my main thing that I'm realizing at the moment is to just become really aware of what you're saying to yourself. So what if we it's like what you were saying about the water thing. If you keep writing it down, you keep saying it, eventually you are going to change your neural pathways.
Mm.
So you need to be careful what you're saying to yourself, and be aware if you're slipping into that sort of chronic negativity where you're like, I can't do this, I'm not good enough at that, or um, anything else that's maybe slightly negative. Just really catch yourself doing it and see, and you might feel really stupid at first
Mm.
telling yourself things that you don't believe, but I promise you, like, it will start to pay off if you can start to, if you manifest what you want to achieve in your life. You will start to notice things change, and you start to achieve the things that you really want to. So just your words are your prayers. I think, remember that.
Yeah, that's so accurate, and definitely something that I think a lot of people really resonate with is that sort of manifesting your own goals and kind of your dreams as well, and the power of thought. And I absolutely love what you say about how your thoughts become your, sorry, your words become your thoughts and your thoughts become your actions, and how that they all play such a interconnected role with each other. And it reminds me of on the topic of mindfulness, there was this, I was listening to, it might have been a podcast, it might have been an article I was reading, but there was this wellness coach, I think her name was Jennifer Cohen Harper, and she
Mm.
said something about mindfulness, less about I guess what Hollywood makes it out to be, or what we have this idealized version of sitting there and in lotus and you're meditating and you're being at one and you're in, at peace and all of that. And it's more about awareness. Mindfulness is more about awareness. And because if we're aware, we will intrinsically change our behaviors, and we will adapt how we think and how we behave. In terms of being aware and being present, what are some of the best ways that you what are some of the ways in which you would coach clients, or friends or people that you know, of being more present, of staying more aware with themselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been doing a lot of research into this year, because I mean, what I've discovered in the last um, year, from since I've basically been self-employed, and my anxiety levels were obviously a lot higher, because there's suddenly a lot more things I had to deal with, and that sort of imposter syndrome and fear. There was just so much fear in my first year of being self-employed, that I wasn't going to make it, or I wasn't going to be good enough. And whenever I get anxious or overwhelmed, I start to become less mindful in the way I do things.
Hmm.
um, I now, because I have this yoga practice, I'm actually really aware of these behaviors. So I make a commitment to work on my mental health and my mindset. And um, basically, it's once you've established like that, you have to become aware first that you're maybe not living as mindfully, or even as sustainably as you'd like. So I think awareness is a really important stage of it. And then ways to encourage mindfulness would be, my favorite is to use your senses more. So
Mm.
like when you're cooking, for example, use your hands to feel the food that you're cooking. Smell it, smell the raw ingredients, smell it when it's all together, when you brought everything together. And really look at the colors as well. Use your senses. They are there every day, but we forget to use them. And I'll tell you something as well: if we don't use it, we lose it. So if you're relying on one sense over the other, you're actually going to damage your memory by doing that. So we stare at computers all day. Our eyes probably, they are used more than probably most of our senses. But and our feeling, our touch can be like a little bit off, especially because a lot of us have virtual relationships now. So make sure you are using your sense of touch. Whether it sounds weird, but like, give people hugs, and like, I mean, don't give random people hugs, that might not go down so well. But just get comfortable with using your hands. Like, get out in the garden, like feel the earth, um like feel your food. It is shown to reduce your stress levels so much, reduces cortisol levels. And we know that stress is the number one killer. Like, it does also lead to cancer, increased chances of cancer. So there are so many compelling reasons why you should want to reduce your stress levels.
Yeah.
And I think using your senses is a really great way to do that.
That's so true, because even what you were saying about using one sense more than another, you kind of damage the others. It's so true, because
Mm.
imagine, so like, obviously when we were kids, or when you're growing up and you're in school, you're used to doing writing and handwriting, and you practice your writing. And I
Mm.
remember when I made that transition, when I kind of moved into more university, and then obviously in my working life, my penmanship and my handwriting just went to absolute dog shit. It's just scribbles. It looks horrendous on a page. And you're always like, I forgot how to use a pen. And even now, when we've been sort of
Yeah.
locked up, when we've been locked up, where you're staring at a screen, or you're staring at stuff that is utilizing your eyes in a very sort of short focus way. And then even then you just go outside. I remember having this really trippy meta out of body experience a couple of weeks ago, when I hadn't left the house for a few days. without even realizing it, the days had just gone by. And I realized, oh shit, I
Mm.
need to go to the shop and get something, or I need to go to the supermarket. So I left the house, and it really tripped me out. It was a beautiful sunset, but the sky looked kind of fake to me. It was a very weird out of body feeling where I realized my eyesight and my eyes, I'd been using it for stuff that was maybe only a couple of feet in front of me. I hadn't been using that long focus. And I went outside and looked at the sky, and it was stunning and it was
Wow.
gorgeous. But I was like, this feels very like I'm in a bubble. It felt really, really, really weird. So I think you're so right about there's definitely got to be some
Mm.
science behind the way in which your neural pathways are triggered by certain senses, and if you don't use it, you lose it. Like exactly like you said.
Mm. Hmm. And it's really the same with movement as well. So make sure that, like, even if you're really into yoga, then like do different types of yoga, do different types of physical. Don't use it as just your only physical activity, because
Mm.
we need to move our bodies in different ways, in so many different ways every day, and it changes your neuroplasticity as well. So it's really good for your brain, it's good for your memory. Like if you're just doing the same movements every day, you're limiting your range of motion,
Mm.
and it's also signaling to your body it's not safe to use any other ranges of motion. So I mean, you'll probably remember this from my yoga classes, but like we do some random things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just get your body into a different shape, because it's not just for your body, it's also for your brain, and it's that mind body connection as well. So um yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I always just have the funniest memories of our yoga classes, and some of the poses that we would do, or
It
some of
was
the
so
ways you
fun.
would describe them are very, yeah, just very Tilly, just very sweet and funny. Um,
We
but
did
yeah,
have fun, didn't we?
we did. It was always so good. But yeah, I mean, speaking, let's circle back to yoga. So why? I mean, I guess you've probably already spoken about it, but if we can sort of recap in terms of for you personally, what is it that you really love about yoga?
I I think I love how it is something that you can take away from the mat. So I love a yoga class in itself, but it's really about how it then sets me up for the rest of my day. So I can be having like a really bad day, and just I will acknowledge it, and then I'll be like, you know what I really need is just some time for me, some
Mm,
time to connect back to my center, and just relax, because when I get stressed, I can feel cortisol pumping around my body, and it's so toxic, and it doesn't need to be there. And I just need to come back to my breath. I need to slow everything down. So that's when I'll take to the mat, and it just really helps me to become more focused and calm and restore my nervous system. And yeah, I would say previously I'd used it as which is why I was saying earlier about make sure you're moving in different ways. I was very interested in vinyasa and rocket yoga, so I was doing the same movement patterns over and over, and although that was great in many ways, it didn't actually wasn't serving my body towards the end, and that's not because of the yoga, that's just because I hadn't realized that I needed to maybe do different types of yoga as well, or different types of movement.
mm,
So yeah, I mean, there are loads of reasons why I love it. I guess one thing with that I'm trying to achieve with the yoga agency, where we work with a lot of corporate clients, is that so although we offer a lot of wellness classes, so not just yoga, we'll offer wellness talks and coaching and Pilates and mindful hit classes. The reason is because it's all about a way of life, and it really tries to cover all the different aspects of health. So social health, spiritual health, emotional health, and then obviously physical health as well, and mental health. So I guess what is really interesting is all of our teachers, whether they're a nutritional therapist or a wellness coach, they also have a background in yoga. So we
mm.
share the same values, and they've got a really holistic understanding of health as well.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm trying to achieve with the business is to try and get people talking about spiritual health more, because we speak to a lot of companies, and the first thing they'll say is like, nothing too spiritual. And I'm really interested as to why, because our spiritual health is about connecting to ourselves and living a more purposeful life and seeing ourselves as part of a bigger cosmos and like our place within this world. So I find it really fascinating that that conversation is kind of suppressed. And I think it's, you know, it is in all of our classes, like it is an intention of all of our classes to improve mental, physical and spiritual and intellectual and social health. But it's not something that I would market for that reason. So I think that's something that I would like to change the conversation around spiritual health, because I do think it's really important to all of us.
Yeah, I find that quite surprising. Actually, you know what? I find it surprising, but I also find it not that surprising. I guess I find it surprising in the sense that, like you said, spiritual help and spiritual awareness and spiritual positivity, it's not doctrine, right? It's not a religion. You're not preaching a religion. It's more about self and empathy and yeah, it's from my perspective, and I guess from my experience, it's nothing about, yeah, it's not something that's controversial. It's not like you're saying, oh, but then equally, maybe from a corporate perspective, they're thinking they can't make that connection, or they're too concerned about it coming off as like almost borderline religious, which then obviously is, you
Definitely.
know, that's a whole other thing that from a corporate perspective or from a business perspective, you know, we businesses want to be equal opportunities, so they can't be seen as endorsing one way of life or lifestyle or religion
Mm,
over another. So I do get that, but I do find it quite strange that in, especially nowadays, where, like we were saying at the beginning of this episode, the wellness industry is massive. It's completely boomed over the last 2 to 3 years. And I think there is so much more
mm,
understanding and also scientific research that's been put behind a lot of the theories that were pushed forward by the wellness lifestyle. So I do find it
mm.
quite surprising that, yeah, even now you do encounter these sorts of challenges. But let's definitely dive deep into the yoga agency. So how did you start the yoga agency and when did you start it?
So I started it in 2018 with my friend Mary, and we were both working for very forward-thinking businesses. Like you, at City Pantry, it was all about bringing teams together over food and creating a good office culture. And we both, Mary and I, both had the same idea of bringing yoga into the workplace. And we had the motivation because we were absolutely so passionate about sharing the practice of yoga. And we also knew that there was an opportunity there because we were working in these companies that would invest in something like yoga.
Mm.
So we did that for a year, and it was great. Our clients loved it. It was very much a passion project, and I don't think either of us really ever thought or had the confidence to think it could be anything more than a side hustle or a passion project. But then Mary left for Australia last year, rather unexpected turn of events. And so I decided to take the leap and go for it and just make it my sole source of income. So I left City Pantry. I started teaching a lot initially. I love teaching and I really wanted to give it a go properly. But it did leave little energy and time for the business, for actually growing the business. So it wasn't until sort of early at the start of this year that I started to reduce the number of classes I was teaching and get my rocks in place with the yoga agency. So I hired a coach who has been absolutely phenomenal, and has helped me so much with the mindset stuff and really stepping into a leadership position, whereas previously I'd always sort of underplayed the yoga agency. I think a lot of new business owners will probably have that imposter syndrome
Mm.
feeling. So yeah, I mean, the first year was really challenging when I went freelance. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of anxiety, a lot of financial anxiety. And then getting a coach and getting some help and having the yoga practice to make me aware of like where I was falling short was in terms of my mindset was just so powerful. And this year the yoga agency is obviously thriving. It's an incredible time to be in the wellness industry, and I've really done a lot of inner work, and found my inner leader, so to speak. So yeah, that's sort of how the yoga agency got up and running.
Yeah, you mentioned that this year has been a really great year for you as a business in terms of the demand for the services that you offer. Why do you think wellness has become such a big market and there's been so much more of a focus on personal wellness and mental health over the last few years? What do you think are some of the reasons behind that?
I think there are now platforms where people are talking very openly about mental health, and this sort of finds its way into the workplace as well, because employees also have expectations now, and it's kind of a case like do or die for employers.
Mm,
So I think there is a generational gap still. So like I think if you speak to our parents' generation, they are less open to the topic of mental health, and that's a huge stereotype, so apologies if that doesn't apply to you, but I know from my own parents and their sort of friends and family that they're very, very resilient, but they're not that interested in talking about mental health, and they almost see asking for help as a sign of weakness, and they find strength in that.
mm,
Obviously, it is something that needs to be acknowledged, especially with the sort of rapid growth in technology and us not having tools to know how to set boundaries, and life becoming increasingly faster and faster. It is a different world, and therefore, and a lot of us didn't have education or training in mindfulness and how to cope and how to set boundaries and how to deal with technology and be in control of it rather than letting it control our lives. So I think the conversation, it's there's a boom because the conversation has to happen. Like all you
mm.
need to do is look at the statistics. There's a statistic about young people, especially since COVID, and the increase in suicide rates. Like we need to look after our younger generations. It's very urgent. This conversation is very overdue. So I think companies recognize that. Employers want to attract talent as well, so they want to invest in the right things. And that brings me on to my second point, which is that mindfulness and wellness, if your employees are healthy, then you're going to have a healthier workforce, which means you're going to have a healthier business. Like
Mm.
it works both ways. And there are so many studies now, like the evidence is there that like
Yeah.
mindfulness and meditation, they do increase productivity and focus. And there's all kinds of wellness classes to tap into different parts of your brain to get people more creative and innovative. They can also enhance social relationships. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why there's a current boom.
Definitely. And I completely agree with you. I don't think it is a generalization to talk about this generational gap and the different approach to mental health. You know, it is a generalization, but I definitely think that it's not without reason. It's definitely something that I have encountered with different generations in my family and people who I know. And whilst it's been great because most of the people that I know who maybe did not grow up in that mindset or grow up in a generation where, like you said, their resilience was their strength, and that, being able
Mm.
to maybe compartmentalize issues and sort of rise above it was definitely a strength. However, like you said, the science is there, and we have had enough time now, and different generations and different ways in which people have grown up with different values, and also the technology advancements as well. We can see those changes in mindset and stresses and health issues as well as the generations have gone on. So I think it's been a really great thing that this has become so much more part of the norm, and talking about mental health has become so much more normalized. So yeah, I definitely agree with you that there is a bit of a generational gap there. Do you find that when you're working with different companies and clients and people approach you maybe to inquire into your services, do you find that they're already at a stage where they offer these sorts of benefits to their employees or these sorts of wellness services to their employees? Or is it a bit more of they feel like they need to provide something, and they're kind of looking for a bit more instruction? How do you tend to work with these different corporate clients?
I think it really varies. Like sometimes the individual might be really passionate about it themselves, which is why they're looking into it for their team. Other times it might just be sort of like a tick box exercise. But I think either way, it doesn't matter, because after they've started the wellness classes and the wellness programs, already started the journey, like just showing up to and committing to yourself and like making a decision to improve your own health and well-being, whether it's mental health, physical health, all the different aspects of health, then you've already started, like you're already on your journey. So I think, yeah, we see a whole range of different people coming to us with different backgrounds. So yeah.
So how are some of the ways that the yoga agency helps or works with these different customers or different clients? What sort of services do you guys offer? Because I know that you started obviously primarily with yoga, hence the name of the yoga agency, but I know you've expanded a lot in your services and the different coaches that you have, especially in this last year. So can you kind of outline some of the services you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So it's very broad now. Like, I would like to think we cover all wellness topics. So as you mentioned, we started with yoga. Now we have Pilates and HIIT. We have breath work, which is really popular because it's obviously very accessible, but really effective in reducing stress levels. And given that most of us have chronic dysfunctional breathing patterns, it's obviously very highly sought after. And then we've got nutrition workshops, which is really tackling physical health, but then there are topics around the relationship between food and mood, which is really interesting as well. And then we've got financial well-being workshops, because I don't think financial anxiety is talked about enough. And I think it's, oh God, I'm going to get this wrong. Is it 60 or 80% of our financial well-being is actually our mindset? So developing a relationship with money that is healthy is so important.
Yeah.
And so I think that especially in the workplace, it's a really nice place to offer that kind of session. And we've had really good feedback from that as well. So, and then we've got sleep workshops, which obviously there's so much about sleep now. We know how important it is for us. And some of our yoga classes are tailored towards helping people with insomnia. So yoga nidra is a really good one for that as well. Then we do wellness talks. So we've got a lot of wellness coaches who do really uplifting and motivating and inspiring wellness talks across a range of topics. And then what else do we have? Obviously, Pilates and HIIT, which I think I already mentioned. Dance is a great one because it's a really good way to have fun and to relax the whole body, and to also tap into like different parts of the brain as we're trying to learn a new routine. And then we've got mindful art as well, which is a really incredible class where our teacher, who's like a really experienced artist, an award-winning artist, she's also a mindfulness coach. So it's really about like letting go and not getting attached to the outcome, the end of what your drawing or painting is going to look like. Rather, it's using different exercises to tap into your creativity. So like I did it for our yoga agency team event, and my drawing, I had this big like A2 piece of paper, and it was just hilarious, the things that were on there, because she made us do exercises where we close our eyes, where we draw backwards, just like really fun exercises. So that's a great one as well.
Oh, wow. There's definitely something to be said for tapping into the areas of your brain that are not pre-programmed and not in autopilot, isn't there? And I think there's so much about our everyday life that is on autopilot that you're almost reawakening other parts of your brain that you hadn't, or your body, like you were saying earlier about doing different kinds of yoga and different types of movement. There's definitely a very similar exercise going on with the brain there, isn't there?
Definitely. I love how you put that as well. I think that's a big part of our goal at the yoga agency, is to help people tap into different parts of their brain. And also just, I don't know if you've seen, there's this new Netflix documentary on the mind explained, and one of the episodes is on psychedelics.
Yes,
and it's
I
really
haven't watched
interesting
it
how
yet
it
though. But tell me, I haven't watched it.
Oh,
But
it's really good.
tell me.
But I won't spoil it too much. But there's just a really interesting episode on psychedelics where it sort of explains how, if you think of our brain as like a sheet of snow, and our thoughts just follow, they go down like a toboggan, and they carve roots in the snow,
Mm.
and we just keep thinking the same thoughts, and we get really, really stuck in these patterns of thinking. But through mindfulness and also psychedelics, I
Mm.
start going taking loads of mushrooms, but
That's not a
done in a
course you
safe
guys
space,
offer.
and but that can also be done through meditation and mindfulness. We can start. No, it's not yet. But basically, it's like having this big dump of fresh snow, and you can start to, your toboggan can go down different routes, and you start to explore all these different aspects, and different brain paths. So that's really interesting, I think. And it's the same with mindfulness and meditation. You're basically undoing a lot of the narratives, a lot of the stories you've told yourselves, and you're creating new ways of thinking. And that's a really, big motivation for us to be delivering these classes, because they can really change the way that you're thinking and make you aware of any limiting beliefs, and become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It's really amazing how you've expanded into all these different elements of the wellness industry and personal wellness over such a short period of time. I think it's so incredible that you've done all of this, and done all of this as like essentially a one-woman show. You're just amazing. In terms of being a female entrepreneur, what have been some of the biggest challenges for you? You've mentioned imposter syndrome quite a few times already in our chat, and it's definitely something that I resonate with a lot, especially now even doing this podcast. It's a completely new channel project endeavor for me, and there are moments where I'm thinking, God, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And yeah, so what are some of the biggest challenges for you as a female entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, imposter syndrome was a big one, but it's also very possible to overcome it, and that's what I'm realizing at the moment. And it's just about connecting back to you and getting really clear about why it is that you're doing what you're doing, or what it is that you are actually doing and why.
Mm.
And look and understand your intention, and know that it doesn't matter what people think, as long as you know what your purpose is and you really connect to that purpose. um I think that's sort of really powerful in itself, because it helps you to just take pride in what you do and have that confidence to do it. And I think as well, stop comparing yourself to other people. That is a really big one for me. So they say comparison is the thief of joy, and I really do believe that is true. And it's really good to focus on what you already have and what's already coming to you, because it's universal law that light attracts light, love attracts love, joy attracts joy. And if you want more things to be grateful for, then you have to be really thankful for what you already have.
Mm.
So I think that's really helped me to overcome imposter syndrome. And then another one is procrastination. So I think a lot of us are, in our own ways, perfectionists. And that can be a really good trait, but it can also be your worst enemy. So learning that it's okay to make mistakes, and to just start, was a really big lesson for me. And there's this really, really great quote that I love by J.R. Kim, and I always refer back to it as a way to help myself overcome procrastination. So, and don't quote me on this because I'm sure I'll read it wrong, but it's something like, it's not about making the right decision. It's about making the decision you make the right decision. And I
Mm.
just love that, because honestly, it's so liberating. And I think my boyfriend has also benefited from this, because our first year of our relationship was like, oh God, where are we going to eat tonight? Like, everything had to be perfect. It was just so stressful.
Yeah.
Whereas we just remind each other now, and we do say it to each other a lot, because it helps us move our life forward. And a lot of the time we're held back by fear it's sort of ingrained in our mind and in our memories. So we might not go and do what we actually want to do because we're afraid. And I think that will hold us back in so many ways. So just knowing it's okay and embracing your failures. Start to view your failures as success, because you're going to learn, and there's going to be an opportunity that arises from your failures, whether it's something you've learned mentally or physically. They're some of the main things.
They're so powerful as well, and I completely agree with you. One of my favorite mantras that I constantly tell myself as well is I don't have time for a comparison hangover. And it's something
Love
that,
that.
oh, it's just so, like you said, it's so liberating, because you think that, and it does nobody any good to be constantly looking externally, when you know,
Mm.
ultimately, yes, of course, you know, we have friends and we have family and we have loved ones and we have these network of people that are around us and that support us, that we, you know, we're naturally personable and sociable creatures, right? We're humans. But ultimately, you do just have yourself. Like, you know, you have your brain, you have your thoughts. You don't have access to these other people and what they're going through and their thoughts and their minds. So, really, you have to treat yourself with that kindness, and
Mm.
comparing yourself constantly to the external is just so unproductive, because you're just going to end up beating yourself up about it constantly and just recycling these negative thoughts of being not good enough. And that has been such a huge learning for me, and something that I really struggle with still, very
Mm.
much so, on a
Mm.
daily basis, of being, and I catch myself doing it without even realizing that I'm engaging in these negative thoughts and in these toxic thoughts. And I just have to bring myself back and remind myself of, like, no, what are you doing? It's so easy to slip into those toxic behaviors that are not doing yourself any favors. And I think it really, it's very similar to what you were talking about earlier about our neural pathways, about the snow, and we're constantly going down
Mm.
this same path because that's what we've carved out for ourselves, and that's almost the easier route. and
Mm.
and teaching ourselves to think differently and change that mindset is effort. It's really hard work, but it pays off so much more in the long run. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, completely. And I think another thing that's really good to be aware of is a lot of the time we tell ourselves that we're naturally good at something, or we're not naturally good at that thing. And we assign those labels to other people as well. And actually, that can be really limiting. So I realized when I've always told myself that I'm terrible with numbers and that I'm not good with spreadsheets. And as a result, I've caused myself a lot of financial anxiety because I just couldn't look at, like my spending. It just stressed me out too much.
Don't
So,
show me a balance
um,
sheet.
yeah, yeah. So you can imagine when I'm trying to run a business and with
Yeah.
that kind of mindset, I mean, I'm not going anywhere. So I really had to look at that and address it. And it's been really empowering for me to undo those narratives of being naturally good at something. Who cares? Like, teach yourself. Like, you can do
Mm.
anything you set your mind to. And I really have learned that this year. And it's so empowering. And I really hope anyone listening can, if they take away anything, it's that you can do whatever you set your mind to. You are powerful beyond measure. And the only thing you need to really fear is how great you can be. So
Yeah.
I think, just look at what you want to do, figure it out, and then really commit to yourself and start making those moves in the right direction, and don't let fear stop you.
Oh, I love that. I think that's fantastic advice. I absolutely love that. Um, I'm very conscious of time, so I want to make sure that I ask you these questions, because I have so many. I could honestly go on talking to you for hours and hours and hours of the day.
I know, me too. Me too.
um,
This is always the case at City Pantry as well.
I know, yeah, we'd never
It
get
was
any
hard to
work
do any
done.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, in terms of for yourself and the things that the sort of the daily affirmations or the stuff that you tell yourself, do you have any favorite affirmations or reminders that you say to yourself, to whether it's to stay balanced or to be present, or to just be thankful? I mean, do you have any favorite affirmations?
Yeah, I think I just really remind myself that life is so beautiful and we're only here once. And you are, when you feel upset or hurt, then focus on what is good in your life. And right now is a really difficult time. People are very overwhelmed. We're living in a challenging time. And the best way to support ourselves when things are really challenging is to look at what we have, and like what's already beautiful, what's already wonderful, what's already coming to us. And we're sort of tuning into that frequency of abundance and love and forgiveness and gratitude. And I think that really keeps me going during these times, because really when you take it all back, like, all we really need is our breath. We need love, we need our relationships, um but that on a very basic level, that's what we need to survive. So then when you go from there and you realize everything you have on top of that, like, is pretty maddening actually. So I think just reminding myself of that when I can, I can easily slip into that victim mode. I really noticed that I changed something in my brain this year, because I didn't feel, all I did was I looked for the gift. Like, what are the opportunities here so I can spend more time on my business? Like, I didn't once think, oh, this is about me, like da da da. And that really was like a good moment for me, because I realized that I've sort of tapped into a different part of my brain. So it's very, very possible. And yeah.
Yeah, that's very freeing. It's very freeing, isn't it? To be able to shift your mindset and focus on those gifts and being grateful for those little things. It's definitely something I try to practice with my journaling. Like I said earlier, whether it's a great cup of coffee, am I grateful for that? Absolutely. Grateful that the sun was shining and it put me in a good mood. Small stuff like that can really, if you start to notice those small things, you start to be a lot more, you start to let the other stuff go, because ultimately it just doesn't really matter as much anymore, and you stop fixating on them. So I think that you're right. It's extremely freeing to shift your mindset in that way.
Definitely. And I think as well, that the importance of having fun, which is actually one of our wellness talks. I just want to mention that, because so especially some of us who are interested in health and wellness could sometimes also be taking life quite seriously. And there is a link between being really serious and depression. So it's really important to make sure, if you do have a tendency to get quite serious and bogged down by things, to look, and this sounds ridiculous, but schedule in fun. Like, that sounds really unfun, but like, put it in your diary. If you struggle and you feel like naturally you don't have fun, or you're not laughing enough, then schedule it in. Eventually you will change. And surround yourself by people that are making you laugh, because having fun and humor, there's a really great book actually, by Jennifer Aker and Naomi Bagdonis, called Humor Seriously. And it's really fantastic. Looks at the science and health benefits of humor. And it just hits so many nails on the head. But if anyone's looking for a good read, that is a good one.
Oh, amazing. I'll have to look into that one.
Have fun. Yeah, well, schedule time for fun.
Speaking of fun, Tilly, I still can't nail crow pose. What am I doing wrong? What do I need to do? I can't nail crow, and it is giving me so much frustration. How do I get it right?
Well, can you show me?
Not right now. Maybe I'll show you later. I'll take a video of it when I'm doing it as my practice, and you can tell me what I'm doing wrong.
I can give you a few tips now. So hands, like, use your fingers like claws. So you should really grip the floor with your fingers, and you'll feel all the muscles in your arms start to activate. Then you also want to think about your core. So you want to pull your belly button up and in. And you really want to squeeze your glutes as well, and you hug your heels up towards your bum, and think about pulling all the energy in and up.
I'm squeezing in the wrong places.
Yeah, maybe just try different things. And also I would recommend doing a little breathing exercise before, so you're completely chilled out. Don't rush it, go into it so slowly. And finally, but very importantly, look forwards, look up, lift your chin, look forwards.
Yeah. See, I remember the looking up and the chin up. I always do that. So I'm gonna send you.
We'll jump on a call in a week, and we'll do it. We'll run through it, and we'll get you up. Don't you worry.
All right, you've got it. Cool. And then finally, so this is the Lipstick Gang, and I do ask all of my guests this. Do you have a favorite lip color?
Ooh, yes, I love. Oh my gosh, I think of Pillow Talk, by Charlotte Tilbury.
Yes, I love.
That's my favorite color.
Yes,
but I also love Clinique Chubby Chubby. But it's the pink one. I'm not sure what shade of pink it is, but I love them because they're so moisturizing for my lips. And I do get dry lips, so.
Oh, I love that. Perfect. Yes, I love Pillow Talk. Love Charlotte Tilbury. She's amazing. Oh, that's awesome.
She's great.
Oh, well, Tilly, thank you so much.
Customer service messages. So it's like, hi, darling. I'm like, yeah. So good.
Oh, I love it. Oh, Tilly, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such an amazing conversation. I've absolutely loved having you as a guest. Like I said, I could probably speak to you for hours about meditation, yoga, wellness, mindset, all of it. I think it's
Oh,
just so
likewise.
fascinating, and you've given such amazing nuggets of information today. So thank you so much for being a guest.
No, thank you. I'm so delighted to have been here with you. Thank you so much.
And if people want to find you and the yoga agency on social media or online, where can they go?
Oh, you can follow me on Instagram, Tilly Berry Wellness, or the yoga agency, or you can find our website at www.theyogaagency.co.uk.
Amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me, Tilly. And thanks everyone else for joining in. That was another episode, and we'll see you next time.